Right now, I am standing on the cracked asphalt of the driveway at 422 Sycamore Lane. The time is exactly 4:42 p.m. The air is a weather report of 42 degrees sleet and the suffocating scent of wet, rotting oak leaves and gray city exhaust. The humidity is 88%, causing the moisture to bead on the surface of the single heavy-duty 30-gallon black trash bag I am holding in my right hand. Inside that bag is the entirety of my legal and physical existence. A $15 manual typewriter I salvaged from a library basement. A 115-page blue binder filled with property tax receipts and municipal codes. 3 pairs of denim jeans, worn thin at the knees from 5,000 hours of kneeling on the floor of a dye vat, and a $2 plastic alarm clock that ticks at a frequency of 1 hertz. My father, Thomas, is standing in the doorway of the house. The house is a 4,500 square foot colonial with a wraparound porch that I personally repainted in 1991. Thomas is wearing a $450 wool sweater made of grade A cashmere that I bought him for his 60th birthday. He is holding a crystal glass of $18 orange juice, freshly squeezed and chilled to 4 degrees Celsius. He looks at me with a pulse rate of exactly 62 beats per minute. His eyes are not clouded with anger. They are clear, reflecting the flat indifference of a man disposing of a piece of furniture that no longer matches the renovation of his ego. He said, "Wilda, you have to understand the mathematics of the room. Your brother Leo is starting a family now. Vanessa's 6 weeks pregnant with the next generation of the Watson name. They need the square footage. They need the stability of the master suite. You've always been the steady one, Wilda. But in this family, steady is just another word for stagnant. You're a burden on the potential of this house. You are the anchor that keeps the ship from sailing into the future. It's not an insult. It's just your nature as the daughter who never quite took off. If you're watching this video, subscribe. Tell me where you're from. Are you the one paying the property taxes in the dark? Or you the one being kicked out of the house you saved? The year was 1985. We lived in a 900 square foot apartment in Queens that smelled of boiled cabbage and damp industrial carpets. My brother Leo was the golden child from the millisecond his umbilical cord was cut. Leo got the brand new Nike Air sneakers every September, costing $110 a pair. Leo got the private math tutor at $65 an hour when his grades slipped to a C. Leo got the master bedroom in every apartment we rented because boys need their own kingdom to grow. I got the $2 box of generic puffed wheat for my birthday. I got the hand-me-down sweaters that were 4 sizes too big, making me look like a ghost in a wool sack. I got the couch in the living room, sleeping under a $12 fleece blanket with a cigarette burn in the corner that my father left there in 1988. I spent 20 years becoming the shadow of the house. I didn't just survive. I became a forensic architect of the long game. I spent 5,000 hours in the local public library studying the 18th century land grants of the state of New York. I spent my nights at a 24-hour diner working as a dishwasher for $5.15 an hour. My hands were permanently wrinkled from the gray, 120-degree dishwater. My fingernails were bitten down to the quick, stained with the grease of other people's meals. My grandmother Rose was the only person who saw the shadow. She died in 2012. She had a 40-acre estate in this colonial house on Sycamore Lane. The family assumed she left it to my father. They assumed Leo was the natural heir to the Watson throne. But Grandma Rose was an auditor of the soul. She saw my father spending her pension on Leo's business ventures that always resulted in a zero balance. She saw my father signing loans for Leo's sports cars that were never repaid. 10 minutes ago, my father handed me the final trash bag and a bus token. He said Leo needs the master suite for the nursery. You can move into a studio in the city. It'll be good for you to finally be independent, instead of leaning on us for a roof over your head. That was the microaggression he served with every Sunday roast. He didn't look at the $12,000 roof repair I financed with a high-interest personal loan in 21. He didn't look at the $8,500 HVA system that keeps his $18 orange juice at 4 degrees. He didn't realize that the family roof he was so proud of was currently held up by the scaffolding of my credit score. I didn't yell. I didn't tell him about the blue binder in my trash bag. The binder contains the original irrevocable trust Grandma Rose signed in 2011. It contains the deed to 422 Sycamore Lane. The deed has one name on it: Wilda Watson. I looked at the house one last time. The white paint is peeling at the lower corner of the porch. I thought about the $4.50 egg and cheese sandwich I ate for breakfast. I thought about the coldness of the pavement under my boots. I said, "Okay, Dad, I'm leaving. I hope the vision is worth the price of the floor." He smiled. He thought he had won the lottery. He thought he was handing his son a kingdom. He didn't realize he was handing his son a 30-day eviction notice for a building that is about to go through a total systematic liquidation. The weather report for 422 Sycamore Lane: a total legal freeze. Visibility: 0. The air in my new space is a weather report of 62.4 degrees, and the scent of stagnant dust and vinegar. It is a 300-square-foot attic in Astoria, Queens. The rent is $850 a month, paid in cash to a man named Mr. Henderson, who doesn't ask for a social security number. The ceiling is slanted at a 42-degree angle, forcing me to hunch over my work until my spine feels like a coiled spring. I am sitting at a desk made of 2 sawhorses and a reclaimed fire door. Price: $12 at a salvage yard in the Bronx. On the desk sits my $15 manual typewriter and a glass of lukewarm tap water. Outside, the N train screams past every 12 minutes, vibrating the floorboards at a frequency that matches the humming in my head. If you're still listening, subscribe. Tell me, have you ever been told you were the hands of a project, only to realize the brain couldn't function without you? My father called me 4 times today. He didn't use a cell phone. He used the landline in the kitchen of Sycamore Lane, the phone I paid for. He said, "Wilda, where is the login for the heating oil account?" The tank is at 4% capacity. The house is 52 degrees. Vanessa is crying because she can't take a hot bath. And the property tax bill arrived today. It's $7,200. Why haven't you paid it yet? Fix it. This is your responsibility as the one who handles the admin of this family. The responsibility he refers to is a ghost. The admin he refers to is the labor of a person he just threw into the rain. I didn't tell him that the heating oil account is linked to my private American Express card. I didn't tell him that the property tax bill is addressed to Wilda Watson, trustee. I spoke with the weather report coldness of a woman who has already accounted for the friction. I said, "The admin role was a condition of my residency, Dad. Since I no longer reside there, the position is vacant." Leo is the visionary. Leo is the one who took the master suite. Visionaries provide their own heat. Visionaries calculate their own taxes. The silence on the other end was 8.2 seconds long. I could hear the drip of the kitchen faucet, exactly 42 drops per minute. Then came the microaggression. "You've always been so petty, Wilda. A small-minded girl with a calculator where her heart should be. It's a very unattractive trait. Leo will handle it. He's a man. He understands the mechanics of the world. He doesn't need a bitter girl to tell him how to turn on a furnace." I hung up. I didn't feel a sting. I felt a clinical satisfaction. He thinks I am petty. He doesn't realize I am the owner of the furnace. The year was 2015. I was 24 years old. I found the identity theft. I was applying for a credit card to pay for my final semester of law school. The application was denied. The reason: high debt-to-income ratio on existing accounts. I found 3 credit cards that had been opened in my name in 2008, the year I turned 18, the year my father told me he was investing in my future. Total debt: $18,400. The charges were specific. $4,500 for Leo's business networking trip to Las Vegas, $1,200 for a leather jacket Leo needed for an interview, $12,700 in cash advances to pay off my father's gambling debt at a local track. The Golden Child contrast was written in 12 font on my credit report. Leo got the Vegas suites. Leo got the leather jacket. My father got the gambling fix. I got the 24.9% interest rate. I got the collection calls at 7 a.m. I got the job at the 24-hour diner to pay off the debt of people who called me a burden. I spent 5 years paying off that $18,400 in secret. I didn't confront them. I didn't sue them. I waited. I watched my father forge Grandma Rose's signature on the asset transfer in 2012. I recorded it with a $45 hidden camera I bought from a pawn shop. I watched Leo borrow $42,000 from the family emergency fund to start a fake car dealership. I watched the bank account hit zero while my father laughed and told me I was unremarkable. The registered letter from the law firm of Thorne and Alchemist is arriving at Sycamore Lane tomorrow at 10 a.m. It is a notice of intent to inspect. It is the first step in a forensic audit of a house that hasn't belonged to my father since the day Grandma Rose died. The weather report for tomorrow: high-frequency panic tends to... Sunday afternoon, the weather report for Sycamore Lane. Humidity, 90%. The air is thick with the scent of an $85 roast beef and a $120 Cabernet Sauvignon. My father is hosting a celebration dinner for Leo and Vanessa. Leo is sitting in the mahogany chair at the head of the table. The chair that cost $1,200 in 1992. Vanessa is talking about the $15,000 renovation they want to do to my old room. "We need Italian marble in the nursery bath," she said. Wilda's old room has such a depressing energy. It smells like office supplies and failure. They didn't know I was watching them through the doorbell camera. The camera I paid for. The camera they were too lazy to disconnect because it required a password they didn't have. The mailman arrived at exactly 1:14 p.m. The sound of the doorbell was a flat digital tone. My father answered it, wearing his $450 wool sweater. He signed for the registered letter with his $450 silver fountain pen. He walked back to the table, laughing with the confidence of a king. "Probably another award for Leo," he said. "The boy is finally being recognized for his vision." He opened the ivory envelope. The air in the room seemed to drop to absolute zero in 1.4 seconds. The letter was printed on the 24-pound bond paper. It said, "To the current occupants of 422 Sycamore Lane." It said, "The Rose Watson Trust Harrowby notifies all residents of a forensic, accounting and structural audit." It said, "You have 72 hours to provide proof of title or a valid lease agreement." It wasn't Grandma Rose's shaky script. It was the signature of the trustee, Wilda Watson. Subscribe. Tell me, have you ever seen the exact second a golden child realizes the throne is made of cardboard? My father called me from the dinner table. His voice was no longer a weather report of high-altitude condescension. It was a weather report of a hurricane with no eye. What the hell is this? "This house is mine. I've lived here for 30 years. I raised you here. How dare you use your admin skills to steal from your own blood?" I was sitting in my attic in Astoria. I was eating a $4.50 egg and cheese sandwich. I spoke with the weather report coldness of a woman who has already seen the autopsy report. I said, "You've lived there for 30 years, Dad. But you've only paid for 5 of them. And those 5 were with the money you stole from my credit cards. Grandma Rose didn't leave the house to you. She left it to the trust. And the trust has determined that you are an unoptimized asset. The furniture is yours. The roast beef is yours. But the floor? The floor belongs to me." "I'll sue you!" Leo screamed in the background. "My wife is pregnant. You're making a pregnant woman homeless." The one that showed Vanessa drinking 315 martinis at a bar on Thursday night. the one that showed the fake ultrasound kit she bought for $45. I said, "Leo, a pregnancy requires a biological variable that Vanessa currently lacks. The only thing that is growing in that house is the debt. You have 72 hours. I'd suggest you start packing the silk scarves." I hung up. The N train roared past. The attic shook. I felt stable for the first time in my life. Day 4. The 72-hour deadline expired at exactly 10 a.m. The weather report for 422 Sycamore Lane is a stagnant, humid fog that smells of damp wool and panic. I arrived at the house in a 1988 black Volvo. The car is solid, reliable, paid for in cash. I wasn't alone. I brought a 3-person team from Thorne & Forensic Auditors. Each auditor was carrying a 115-page clipboard and a high-intensity maglite flashlight. The flashlights cost $85 each. They used D-cell batteries that last for 10 hours. I was wearing a $2,500 charcoal overcoat and $15 surgical gloves. My father, Thomas, was sitting on the porch. He was wearing the $450 cashmere sweater. The sweater was stained with a 2.2-centimeter drop of red wine from the night before. He looked like a piece of stable furniture that had been left in the rain. Leo was in the driveway. He was standing in front of his silver sedan, the car he bought with the emergency fund. He was shouting at the lead auditor, a woman named Sarah. Leo's voice was a weather report of high-frequency desperation. "You can't come in here! This is a private residence! My wife is in a delicate condition. You are trespassing on Watson property." Sarah didn't look up from her ledger. She spoke with the weather report coldness of a woman who has already accounted for the friction. "Watson, we have the original trust documents. We have the property deed, and we have a court-ordered inspection warrant for waste and mismanagement. Technically, the only person trespassing here is someone who isn't on the lease, and since there is no lease, that would be you." I didn't look at Leo. I looked at the peeling paint on the front door. I looked at the $12,000 roof I paid for. I turned to my father. I said, "Dad, the auditors are here to check the plumbing and the electrical and the $42K you were borrowed from Grandma Rose's account to pay for Leo's car. I suggest you move your chair. The dust is about to get very thick. Subscribe. Tell me, have you ever had to audit the people who were supposed to protect you?" The golden child contrast of the audit. Leo got the creative freedom to spend the family's life savings. Leo got the aura of a successful businessman. Leo got the $5,000 watch as a reward for his potential. I got the job of proving the money was stolen. I got the 12-hour shifts in the archive room. I got the $4.50 egg and cheese sandwich I ate in the dark of the basement while I tracked the forged signatures. We entered the house. The air inside was 58 degrees. The heating oil tank was empty. The visionaries had spent the $850 heating budget on a $1,200 espresso machine. The machine was sitting on the kitchen counter. It was made of brushed stainless steel. It was currently cold. Vanessa was in the kitchen. She was wearing a silk robe that cost $400. She was holding a $15 martini glass. She looked at me with the eyes of a predator who had just realized the cage door was open. "Wilda," she said. Her voice was a weather report of fake warmth. "Don't be so rigid. We can talk about this. We're family. The baby needs a stable environment." I walked over to the espresso machine. I touched the cold metal. I said, "A stable environment requires a paid mortgage, Vanessa, and a pregnancy requires a biological variable that you currently lack. Sarah, check the master bedroom. I want an inventory of every piece of jewelry purchased with trust funds since 2012. The silence in the kitchen was 11.4 seconds long. I could hear the drip of the faucet. The audit was no longer an inspection. It was a systematic liquidation of a lie. Day 5. The house has a weather report of 62 degrees and the auditors have left. They left behind a 422-page report. The report is bound in a black leatherette cover. It costs $25 to print. The contents are worth $2.2 million. I am sitting at the dining table. The oak table that cost $8,000. I am wearing my $2,500 overcoat. My father and Leo are sitting across from me. They aren't drinking $120 Cabernet anymore. They are drinking tap water from $2 plastic cups. Vanessa's in the attic I used to live in. I pushed a 12-page document across the table. It was printed on 24-pound ivory bond paper. It was a lease agreement. I spoke with the weather report coldness of a woman who has already calculated the interest. I said, the audit found $312,000 in diverted funds. It found $18,400 in credit card fraud in my name. And it found that the property taxes haven't been paid in 18 months. Technically, Dad, I could have you arrested for forgery tonight. But I'm not a monster. I'm a landlord. The microaggression of the landlord. I watched my father's face turn the color of wet sidewalk. He looked at the lease. The rent for the house was $2,800 a month. The security deposit was $5,600. The master suite was excluded from the lease. The master suite was mine. You're making your own father a tenant? He whispered. His voice was a weather report of a broken heater. I raised you. I gave you this life. I looked at the $450 pen I had placed on the table. I said, you gave me a couch, Dad, and you gave me $18,400 in debt. Grandma Rose gave me this life, and she gave me the house to make sure you didn't burn it down to keep Leo warm. Sign the lease. Or the sheriff arrives at 6 a.m. with the eviction notice, Alan. The golden child contrast of the lease. Leo got the potential to live in a mansion for free. Leo got the aura of ownership without the cost of the taxes. Leo got the master suite for a nursery that was a fiction. I got the reality of the signatures. I got the master key. I got the right to decide who sleeps under this roof. Leo looked at me. His hands were shaking. His $5,000 watch was ticking at a frequency of 1 hertz. He said, Wilda, we don't have $5,600. The dealership failed. The investors, they took everything for the sake of the family. I looked at his watch. I said, sell the watch, Leo. It's worth $450 at a pawn shop. The tow truck is arriving at 8 a.m. I've already initiated the repossession for the trust. You have 180 seconds to sign. The clock is running on my time now. The sound of the pen on the ivory paper was the only symphony I needed. The burden was now the owner. The visionary was now the tenant. 1985, the year of the first microaggression. I was 10 years old. The air was a weather report of 45 degrees and the smell of industrial laundry detergent. Leo was 8. Leo got the $110 Nike Air sneakers. Leo got the $45 remote control car that he broke in 12 minutes. Leo got the praise for having a strong spirit when he hit me. I got the $12 fleece blanket with the cigarette burn. I got the job of cleaning the bathroom with a $2 sponge and bleach that burned my eyes. I got the lecture about being the steady one who didn't need rewards. Subscribe and tell me, what was the first thing they took from you and gave to the golden child? The montage of the grind. 18 years old. I was working 40 hours a week at the 24-hour diner. My salary was $5.15 an hour. I paid my own tuition for community college. I paid for my own $4 bus pass. My father took my first paycheck to pay for Leo's karate lessons. He said, Leo needs to learn to be a man. You already know how to be a worker. It's your nature, 22 years old. I was living in the attic. The temperature was 85 degrees. I was working 80 hours a week as a paralegal. I spent 5,000 hours studying the Watson family history. I found the 1974 safety report, the one my father forged to protect his concrete company. He had traded the lives of 3 men for a jawline and a membership to a country club. I kept the original microfilm in a Ziploc bag. It was my first piece of auto. 25 years old. The air was a weather report of absolute silence. My father sat in the kitchen and drank $60 bourbon. He told me the house was his. He told me Leo was the heir. He told me I was a burden on the family estate. I didn't tell him I had already met with Grandma Rose's lawyer in 2011. I didn't tell him I had the 115-page irrevocable trust. I spent 10 years being the stable furniture. I paid the electricity. I paid the oil. I paid the insurance. I watched them buy silk and drink Cabernet while I ate $2 generic cereal. I was the floor they walked on. I was the roof that kept them dry. I was the bank they robbed every single day. Now, back to the kitchen. December 1994. The sun is setting at exactly 4:22 p.m. The light is hitting the $8,000 oak table. I am standing in the master suite. I am unpacking my $15 manual typewriter. I am placing it on the desk where my father used to count his gambling winnings. Leo is in the hallway. He is carrying a cardboard box. He is moving his things to the attic. He looked at me through the open door. He said, "You think you're better than us now, don't you? Just because you have a piece of paper." I spoke with the weather report coldness of a woman who has already seen the winter. I said, "I don't think I'm better, Leo. I think I'm the owner. And a person with a piece of paper can sleep in a warm room. A person with a vision sleeps in the attic. Check the insulation. The N train is due in 4 minutes." Day 15. The morning of Vanessa's 6-week ultrasound. The air was a weather report of high humidity and the smell of expensive perfume and damp attic dust. Leo was in the kitchen, trying to look like a man with a plan. He was wearing his $5,000 watch, which he hadn't sold yet. He was drinking a $4 cup of coffee I had made for myself. He said, "Wilda, we need a $2,000 advance on the trust for the prenatal care. The specialist in the city doesn't take garnish. You wouldn't want your niece or nephew to start life without the best care, would you? It would be a stain on the family name. This is the Golden Child Shield. They use a baby that doesn't exist to protect a lifestyle that shouldn't exist. They use the stain to guilt the person who provides the soap." She was standing in the doorway. She was wearing a silk robe that cost $400. She was holding a baby planning book she bought for $25. She looked at me with a weather report of high-intensity greed. I didn't give them the $2,000. I pulled out a Ziploc bag from my $3,000 overcoat. Inside was a forensic report from a private investigator I hired in November. Price? $1,500. The report included a receipt from a pharmacy in Brooklyn. The receipt was for a fake ultrasound kit. Price, $45. It also included a video log of Vanessa drinking 3 $15 martinis at a bar on Thursday night. The time on the video was 11:14 p.m. I laid the receipt on the $8,000 oak table. I spoke with the weather report coldness of a woman who has already performed the autopsy. I said, "Prenatal care is for people who have a pulse to monitor. Vanessa, you don't have a baby. You have a $45 prop. And Leo, you don't have a legacy. You have a fraud investigation. I've already notified the bank that the nursery renovation loan you applied for was based on a false claim of dependency." The silence in the kitchen was 11.2 seconds long. I could hear the drip of the faucet. Exactly 42 drops per minute. Leo looked at the receipt. His hands started to shake. The pulse in his neck was visible. Exactly 110 beats per minute. He looked at Vanessa. Vanessa didn't look at him. She looked at her $400 silk robe. She turned and walked back toward the attic. I looked at my father. He was sitting in the corner eating a $2 bowl of oatmeal. He looked at the receipt, and then at me. "Wilda, how could you be so cold?" "She's your brother's wife," I said. "She's a tenant, Dad. And tenants who commit fraud get a 24-hour notice to quit. Leo, the rent for the attic just went up by $400 to cover the cost of the admin fees for your lies. Pay, or the attic becomes a storage unit for people who actually work." The first month of 1995 was a weather report of gray sleet and total liquidation. The vain legacy was being disassembled 1 millimeter at a time. Leo tried to sell the silver sedan to a private buyer. The buyer turned out to be an undercover agent for the Thorn Collective. We bought the car for $12,000, exactly half its value. We sold it for $22,000 the next day. The profit went into the trust. Vanessa left the house on a Tuesday morning at 6:14 a.m. The temperature was 22 degrees. She took the $400 silk robe. She took the $25 baby book. She didn't leave a note. She didn't leave a baby. She just left a void in the attic. My father sat on the porch, watching the tow truck repossess Leo's secondary car from the driveway. The car he had paid for with Grandma Rose's life insurance. The sound of the chains hitting the asphalt was the only alarm clock they had left. If you're still listening, subscribe and tell me, is it better to be the king who falls or the shadow that stays? I spent my nights in the master suite, calculating the biological debt. I used my $15 manual typewriter to create a 422-page record of the Watson family crimes. 2012, the forged asset transfer. 2013, the $42,000 car loan fraud. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel a rush of blood. I felt the same cold indifference I felt when I was washing dishes in 1985. The world hadn't changed. The Golden Children were just being replaced by the truth. I saw Leo in the kitchen at 3 a.m. He was wearing a gray sweatshirt that was 2 sizes too big. He was eating a 75-cent pack of generic ramen. He looked like a ghost looking for a house he once owned. He said, "Wilda, why didn't you just help me? You were always the stable one. You could have fixed this. You could have made it go away with one signature." I looked at him like I was reading the ingredients on his ramen. I said, "I'm fixing it, Leo. I'm fixing the floor. And you're the one who is being swept away. A signature is a weapon. And I've finally learned how to aim." I walked back to my room. I locked the door. The sound of the bolt clicking was the only aura I needed. Day 60, the final meeting of the Rose Watson Trust. The hearing was held in a small, windowless office in Midtown Manhattan. The air was a weather report of 68 degrees and the smell of high-acid paper and industrial floor wax. My father and Leo were there. They brought a lawyer, a man named Silas Sterling who smelled of stale coffee and 20-year-old cologne. He said, "Wilda, this is elder abuse. You can't force a man to pay rent for his own mother's house. We're suing for intentional infliction of emotional distress. We want the trust dissolved. We want the $2.2 million distributed equally between the heirs." Dissolved. Distributed. Equally. The words they use when they want to skip the bill. I didn't use a lawyer. I used a slide projector. The light hit the white wall of the boardroom. I showed the $18,400 in credit card fraud. I showed the fake ultrasound receipt. I showed the $312,000 in diverted funds Leo had used for his visionary life. And then I showed the 1974 safety report, the one my father had forged. The room went silent. The kind of silence you find at the bottom of a well. The judge, a woman named Martha who looked like she was made of cold iron, and 1-2-0-0. Our PM Logic looked at my father. She didn't see a victim. She saw a criminal with a family name, she said. "Mr. Keith Watson, the vision is over. The reality is that you are a tenant, and your landlord is the only person in this room who hasn't lied. The lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice, and I am referring the 1974 safety report to the district attorney for a forensic review." The sound in the boardroom was the sound of a legacy turning into a prison sentence. My father looked at me. His eyes were a weather report of a fire that had been put out with sand. "You destroyed the family, Wilda," he whispered. I stood up. I straightened my $2,500 overcoat. I said, "No, Dad. I just audited the family, and the balance was 0. It is March 12th, 1995. I am 24 years old. I am standing on the porch of 422 Sycamore Lane. The sun is hitting the skyline at exactly 45 degrees. The Watson legacy is no longer a burden. It is a foundation. I have a trust, but the only beneficiaries are the people who actually work the soil. The golden child is working as a night janitor at a local mall. He earns $5.15 an hour. He wears a gray uniform. He doesn't have a vision anymore. He has a $5 mop. He tells the other workers he used to be a king. They don't believe him. My father is still at 422 Sycamore Lane. He lives in the room next to the laundry room. The 60-square-foot room. He hears the 1 RPM spin cycle at midnight. He pays his rent on the first of the month, in cash. To my assistant. I visited the house last week. The air was a weather report of 72 degrees and absolute silence. I looked at the porch. The paint was fresh. White. Solid. I saw my father through the window. He was cleaning the gutters. He was using a 12 RMB shovel. He saw me. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just kept working. He is finally the stable furniture he always wanted me to be. I reach into my pocket. I find a Ziploc bag with a $15 mechanical keyboard key, the enter key, the one I used to file the final audit. I walk to the edge of the porch. I don't throw it. I place it on the stone ledge. It is a piece of furniture now. Sturdy, quiet, unremarkable. My weather report. Clear skies. Visibility, infinite. I am Yila Watson. And the void is finally legacy. May 12th, 1995. The air in the basement of the New York Municipal Archive is a weather report of 64.2 degrees, and the scent of decomposing cellulose and high-acid paper. The humidity is kept at exactly 32% to prevent the municipal records of the 1970s from turning into dust. I am standing in Aisle 42, Section B. I am wearing a $3,500 charcoal wool overcoat and $15 surgical-grade latex gloves. I am looking at a microfilm reel labeled Watson. Concrete, 1974. If you're still watching, subscribe. Tell me, when you dig up the past, are you looking for a treasure, or are you looking for the burial site? 3 weeks ago, I received a letter. It was sent to the Thorn Global headquarters, the 4,000-square-foot warehouse I now own. The envelope was a standard number 10 white paper, bought for 5 cents at a drugstore. Inside was a Polaroid photo of my father, Thomas. He was standing in front of the collapsed parking garage in Queens. The date on the bottom was July 14th, 1974. On the back, a message was written in the same golden child cursive Leo used. The foundation was always hollow, Wilda. You didn't destroy the Watson name. You just revealed the cracks that were already there. I'm starting Watson Resurrection. I have an investor. 9 feet patent for the trust is a violation of a 30-year-old family trade secret. See you in the courtroom. The investor was a man named Silas Sterling. A man who specializes in buying the dead of fallen empires to sell the scrap metal of their reputations. They think they found the original sin of my empire. They think they can prove I stole the trust logic from my father's old business files. I looked at the microfilm. In 1974, my father wasn't a prophet of vision. He was a site foreman for a concrete company in Brooklyn. I found the record of the Queens disaster. 3 workers died when the garage collapsed. The foreman was cleared of all charges because he provided a signed safety report that proved the steel was faulty. But the signature on that report wasn't the steel inspector's. It was a forgery. I recognized the T in the signature. It was the same T my father used when he signed my $18,400 credit card debt in 2008. This is the golden child logic across 2 generations. The father built his career on a forged safety report. The son built his vision on stolen trust funds. And now, they wanted to sue me for violating a legacy of theft. I didn't burn the microfilm. I didn't call my lawyers. I made a high-resolution digital scan. I sent it to the families of the 3 workers who died in 1974. I included a $500,000 legacy reparation from the Thorn Global Community Fund. The weather report for Thomas Watson's resurrection, total extraction. June 15th, 1995. The weather report for Manhattan. Sleet, wind chill, -5. The humidity is 92%. Vanessa is standing inside a pawn shop on 8th Avenue. She is wearing her last $400 silk robe under a trench coat she bought at a charity shop for $12. The robe is stained with the gray silt of the New York subway. The left sleeve has a permanent tear from when she left Sycamore Lane in a hurry. She is holding a $185,000 Patek Philippe watch, the one Leo bought for her with the nursery renovation loan in 1994. The pawnbroker is a man with a $15 Casio and a mind like a forensic ledger. He looks at the watch through a 10x magnifying loupe. The movement is 18K gold, he says. His voice is a weather report of flat indifference. But the serial number has been flagged in a corporate bankruptcy liquidation. This watch technically belongs to the Rose Watson Trust. I can't sell this. I can only give you $500 for the gold weight of the casing. The exact price of the Starbucks gift card Julian. No, Leo. Gave me as a bonus in 1993. The exact price of the self-discovery fund Vanessa used for a single lunch in Paris. Vanessa didn't argue. She took the $500 bills with trembling fingers. She walked to a grocery store on the corner. She bought a $4.50 egg and cheese sandwich and a $2 bottle of water. She ate it in the dark of a Port Authority bus station. If you're still listening, tell me, does the golden child still taste like gold when the money is gone? I watched her through the security feed of the bus station. I was sitting in my 64th floor office at the Thorn building. The air was a perfect 72 degrees. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. I was looking for the biological bottom. I wanted to know if a person built on an aura can survive when the light is turned off. Vanessa finished her sandwich. She threw the wrapper into a galvanized steel trash can. She didn't cry. She pulled out a 15-cent Bic pen from her bag. She started drawing on the back of a bus schedule. She wasn't drawing a vision of a new nursery. She was drawing a floor plan for a 400-square-foot studio. With a solid foundation, I realized then that Vanessa had finally become a worker. And as a worker, she was no longer useful to the ghost of my father. I reached into my pocket and found my Motorola pager. I sent a message to my private investigator. The message was, watch the father. Ignore the girl. August 1995. I am back at 402 Sycamore Lane. But I'm not in the master suite. I'm on the 13.50 floor. A mezzanine level I discovered during the structural audit. It is a space between the primary steel beams where my father kept the concrete files. The air is a weather report of 58 degrees and the sound of the high-speed cooling fans. The smell is stagnant ozone. I found a color-coded tabbed binder in a fireproof safe. Inside was the biological debt of the Watson family. 1985, Thomas Watson's medical records. He didn't have a heart condition that required him to retire and hand the house management to me. He had a $120,000 cosmetic enhancement fund that he used to reconstruct his jawline to look more aristocratic. He paid for it by diverting the employee pension fund of the concrete company. 1992. Leo's college tuition. It wasn't paid for by an academic scholarship. It was paid for by a $150,000 consulting fee Thomas charged to a client who didn't exist. This is the microaggression of the patriarch. He didn't just favor his son. He turned his offspring into containers for his lies. He made Leo incapable of reality so that Thomas could be the only person who knew the truth. Leo wasn't the visionary. He was a mannequin Thomas had dressed in a $5,000 suit. I realized that my father had called me a burden in part one because he was terrified. He was terrified that if I stayed in the house, I would eventually find the 13.5 floor. He was terrified that the stable furniture would eventually look at the ceiling. I didn't leak the files to the press. I sent them to Silas Sterling's attorney. I included a note written with a 50-cent plastic pen. Here is the face you are investing in. The foundation isn't just hollow, it's toxic. The interest on the 1974 debt is now $42 million. The weather report for your partnership? Absolute zero. October 12th, 1995. Thomas Watson invited me to a reconciliation picnic on the wraparound porch. The air was a weather report of 68 degrees and the scent of expensive pine and damp grass. The humidity was 40%. Thomas was sitting in a $12,000 leather chair he had borrowed back from the master suite. He was wearing a white linen suit. He looked like a man who had never seen a 4-yuan Family Mart coffee in his life. "Wilda," he said. His voice was a weather report of forced warmth and the smell of high-end gin. "We're a family again. Leo is working. Vanessa is gone. The Watson name needs a successor who understands the old ways. Release the irrevocable trust. I'll make you the global trustee. You can stay in the master suite. You can stay in the basement. Just let me handle the aura. Don't be the daughter who holds the debt forever. It's so unattractive. Stable. Basement. The microaggressions were a perfect echo of 1985. I looked at the porch railing. The paint was fresh. I said, "The aura is a gas, Dad. It expands to fill the room, but it has no mass. In 1974, you traded the lives of 3 men for a jawline. In 1994, you traded my life for a vision. Why would I want to join a family that values the paint more than the wall?" The silence on the porch was 12 seconds long. I could hear the ice melting in his glass. Thomas looked at me. The weather report in his eyes changed from sun to blizzard. "You are a monster, Wilda. A cold, technical monster. You are the soil that refuses to let the flower grow." I was wearing a $12 hoodie I had kept from my dishwasher days. I said, "The soil doesn't refuse the flower, Dad. It just stops feeding the weeds." The $42 million reparation check was cashed this morning by the Queen's families. The Watson estate is officially insolvent. You can stay for 10 minutes to collect your linen suits. After that, the locksmith will be here to chain the door. While you walked away, the weather was clear. Visibility, infinite. January 12th, 1997. The Thorn Global headquarters has expanded. We aren't just in New York. We are in the global textile futures market. The air in my office is a weather report of high-frequency faxes and the smell of industrial fixer. 9. I am 26 years old. I am managing the Mulberry Blight Protocol. Julian St. Clair, the man who tried to invest in my father, is now my competitor. He is selling NeuroSilk, a digital frequency that promises the aura of silk without the need for actual worms. He called me on my landline. "Elena, no, Wilda. The era of the independent weaver is over. The world doesn't want integrity. They want hyper-reality. I'm here to buy your trust for $2 billion. Not because I want to use it, but because I want to archive it. You are a brilliant relic, Wilda. A ghost of the analog age." I spoke into the receiver. My pulse was a steady 60 beats per minute. I said, "Julian, you're selling a frequency. I'm selling the dirt. And a person who doesn't own the dirt will eventually find their signal blocked." The year was 1997. The global financial crisis was a weather report of total systemic failure. While Julian was buying up digital patents, I was buying the arid land. I spent $120 million on 14,000 acres of mulberry soil in China that everyone said was dead. I knew the monsoon cycle would change. I knew the worms would return. Julian got the $500 million bailout from his father. Julian got the Visionary of the Century cover on the business journals. I had a 200-square-foot lab in a shipping container in the middle of the desert. I had a $15 mechanical keyboard that I used to write the soil regeneration algorithms. March 15th, 1998. The Thorn Global headquarters is now a 500,000 square foot facility in the Swiss Alps. The walls are 24 inches of reinforced basalt. Price: $1.2 billion. We don't weave with hands anymore. We weave with liquid gravity. The golden child of 1998 is a man named Leo Sterling. No relation to Silas. He is a prodigy who believes that texture can be reduced to a binary string. He is the chief aura officer for Julian St. Clair. Leo got the $12 million seed round. Leo got the TED Talk where he claimed that nature is a technical debt. I got a chronic headache from the blue light of the monitors. I got a 4.50-cent egg and cheese sandwich that I ate while watching the liminal decay of Leo's data. I saw Leo in May 1997 at a summit in Basel. He didn't recognize me. I was wearing a gray lab coat and a medical mask. Leo was showing the digital silk to the CEO of a social media platform. He said, "Look at the stability. Thorn has removed the Elena Thorn bitterness. We have created pure desire." He thought my bitterness was a bug in my design. He thought my 20 years of picking mulberry leaves was a biological inconsistency. He didn't look at the water in my glass vial. If he had, he would have seen that every 4.2 seconds the liquid changed its molecular vibration to match his own heart rate. I stayed silent. I looked at the high-frequency arrogance of his hoodies. I knew that the math he was so proud of was exactly 12 months away from a total systematic collapse. September 12, 1999, the 5-year anniversary of the driveway. I am sitting in a virtual reality boardroom. I am wearing a headset that cost $15,000. Julian St. Clair and Leo Sterling are there as digital avatars. Their skins are smooth. Their eyes are perfect. If you're still watching, subscribe. Tell me, is a ghost still a ghost if it lives in a machine? Julian's avatar spoke. His voice was a weather report of digital compression. Wilda, Thorn Global, is down to 12% market share. NeuroSilk is the future. Just sign the legacy transfer. We'll let you keep Sycamore Lane. We'll let you keep the 422-page notebook. Just stop pretending that the atom matters. Stability is like furniture, Wilda. It's useful for a while, but eventually, it's just in the way of the renovation. You're the furniture. We're the light. I looked at the digital furniture in the room. I said, "Furniture is what you sit on when the lights go out. And the lights are about to go out, Julian." I reached into the inventory of my VR interface. I pulled out a single file labeled beta-aldehyde 14, the evolution of the molecule that destroyed my father's concrete company in 1974. The weather report for the VR boardroom. Packet loss. System failure. Total blackout. June 20th, 2007. The fallout of the digital silk scandal was a weather report of total systemic execution. Julian St. Clair's NeuroSilk didn't just crash. It caused a limbic feedback loop in 4.2 million users. They didn't feel a mother's embrace. They felt ashes. For 14 days, the elite of the world couldn't wear their own clothes without skin irritation. Their luxury fabrics felt like the Queen's disaster. From 1974, the history they tried to erase had become their only tactile reality. Julian got the Crimes Against Humanity investigation. Julian got the $12 billion class action lawsuit. Julian got the permanent ban from every financial exchange. Leo Sterling moved to a rural commune in Oregon. He spent his days digging holes for fence posts. He used a 12 RMB shovel. I got a quiet flight back to New York. I didn't buy a Ferrari. I bought the Watson Concrete Company back. I turned it into the Thorn Institute for Forensic Textiles. I hired the 4,000 employees Julian had tried to fire. I gave him $125,000 base salaries. I visited Thomas Watson in his care home one last time. It was October 12th, 2000. He didn't recognize me. He was sitting in his plastic chair staring at a blank wall. I handed him a $4.50 egg and cheese sandwich. He took a bite. He smiled. He said, "This tastes like the 90s. August 2001. I visited the warehouse in Long Island City at 6 a.m. The air was a weather report of 55 degrees and the smell of industrial lemon cleaner. The 4,000 employees were already at their stations. They weren't furniture. They were the board. The Thorn Collective had transitioned to a worker-owned cooperative. Every weaver owned a share of the Thorn 9 patent. Every dyer owned a piece of the Swiss Alps soil. I walked to the spindle of the 19th century jacquard loom. The wood was smooth from 30 years of use. I touched the thread. It was strong. It was honest. Leo Watson passed away in a state-funded facility last month. His obituary was 2 sentences long. It didn't mention the vision. It simply stated that he was a former janitor. I realized then that the color of revenge wasn't red. It wasn't even indigo. It was clear. It was the transparency of a life lived without the need for a mask. December 31st, 2002. I am 31 years old. I am standing on the terrace of my villa in Tuscany. The sun is setting over the Tuscan hills. The wind is 1 mile per hour. Pulse, 60 beats per minute. The archive of original sins is closed. The Thorn Protocol is universal. The family of lies is a ghost. The empire of truth is a huck. I pick up a pen, a simple 50-cent plastic pen. I find a blank piece of paper. I don't write a formula. I don't write a name. I just draw a single circle. A perfect circle. The beginning and the end. I am Wilda Thorn, the daughter of the soil, the heir to the silence. And the void is finally legacy.